Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Having a smooth flight sim experience is something every flight simmer has been chasing since they got into the world of flight simming. Because this is one of the most resource hungry or demanding software that you can ever get for your PC. So this video is not just another settings video that you'll find on YouTube. This video is more about how to get the smoothest possible experience out of whichever system you have. You could have a 3080, 3070, 4070, 4060, I don't care. I'm going to show you step by step how to tune your system to get the best visuals possible, but along with that, how to get a nice stutter-free experience on your system. I promise you that if you watch this video in full and implement this method, you will be able to get a really smooth flight sim for your system. And if I couldn't help you with this video, or if I wasted your time, I'm extremely sorry for that. I hope you at least enjoyed the cinematics or you found some value in this video. And hang in there until the last part of the video, because that is where I talk about something really critical that you need to be careful about when you're tuning your system to get the best smoothness possible. And this is something that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about on YouTube, so make sure you check that one out for sure. Anyway, before we get into the topic, these videos take a lot of time and effort to record, edit, along with my full-time job, and I'm doing it all for free. I don't earn anything from this channel. So I would highly appreciate if you guys could leave a like on the video, and please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss out on any of this content. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's get to the first part of the video. Alright, so the first step is really simple. I want you to check your refresh rate of the monitor, and not just the base refresh rate, but also what kind of options do you have in terms of refresh rate. So to do that, just go to display settings, select your main monitor, and then down here you will see advanced display, and that has display information, refresh rate, resolution, everything. So I'm running 4K 120 Hz right now, but go to this drop down and see what kind of options you have. So I have an option of 240, 120, 100, and then 75, 60. So just make sure you remember what kind of options you have, and also make sure that you have dynamic refresh rate to set to off here. So we'll remember this, and I'll get back to this when we get to our next clip. Okay, so this is where the fun now starts. So I've left the MSI Afterburner frame rate monitor on the left corner here, and on the right corner we have the default frame rate monitor from Msfs, just so that you guys have all the information that possibly can be pulled up. So anyway, we are here at Fly Tampa Boston right now, and I'm in the Phoenix A321, just for your reference. The next thing we are going to do is get in, by the way, so before that, let me demonstrate this. So without doing what I'm going to do in this video, when I'm panning, I still see screen tearing and kind of jittery movement, and it's just that when I'm panning around, these display lines are kind of jittery and moving. You know, I don't know how to explain, and I'm not sure if it will even show up on the video, but I guess you guys get it. It's jittery, and there's a lot of screen tearing going on, even though I have G-Sync on. Note that I have G-Sync on right now. But anyway, we'll get to the G-Sync and all of that later on when we get to the third part of the video. But in this part of the video, what I want you to focus on is get into the graphics settings and make sure that you tweak your settings to get the frame rates just above what your monitor refresh rate is, or whatever monitor refresh rate you choose to run at. So for example, it is totally okay to lock your monitor refresh rate to 60 Hz, and if you choose to run at 60 FPS, totally fine, right? So make sure that you edit your settings, and I've made a separate video on how to edit these settings and which settings are the major hitters on the in Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. So I'm going to leave that video down in the description. You can follow along with that video and edit your settings to make sure that your FPS is just above the refresh rate that you chose to run your monitor at. Okay, make sure, again, I'm repeating this, make sure that you tweak the settings so that your frame rates are right above refresh rate that you choose your monitor to run at. Although I've made that separate video about settings, I'll quickly go over some of the very basic things. So most of you are going to be CPU limited. If you are CPU limited, terrain level of detail is one of the most impactful settings that you can reduce to get some frames. If you are GPU limited, then you will see a lot of benefit by reducing, let's say, ray trace shadows, terrain shadows, contact shadows, cube map reflections, ray marched reflections, things like this will be impacted, will be very impactful if you reduce them if you are GPU limited, which I think very few of you might be GPU limited. Most of you will be CPU limited. Now another set of people will be people who are not CPU limited, but they are VRAM limited. So even though your CPU is performing to its peak, even though your GPU is performing to its peak, you will just be limited by how much VRAM or video memory your GPU has. And if that is the case, I would say the texture resolution is one of the settings that you can really reduce VRAM with. Combined with reducing the terrain level of detail, that will really tone down your VRAM. Now obviously with Sim Update 2, it's a little bit better, but not the best. I think people who have a 4080 with 16 GB of VRAM would still get into situations where they will not be able to push the settings to the max purely because of being VRAM limited. And you can probably also, instead of running DLAA or quality, you can probably run balanced. So for my case, I have selected 120 Hz as the refresh rate that I want my monitor to run at, because if I push my settings to full, most of them ultra, and then leave the terrain LOD to 300, I am able to get just above 120 FPS. So you will see that with this settings, if I go back here into the cockpit, you'll see that once the sim stabilizes, I'm able to get just above 120 FPS, sometimes a little bit below, but mostly I'm getting above 120 FPS. And if I'm getting 120 FPS plus here, then in the air, I'm definitely going to get more than 120 FPS. So that's what we want. The frame rates to be right above the refresh rate. Okay. Now, if you have a 60 Hz monitor, you would want the frame rates to be right above 60. So that means frame rates can be somewhere between 60 and 65, 70 is fine too. Now you would ask me that, okay, why not have frame rates way above what my refresh rate is? We'll get there as well, because there is a trade-off, and it is not what you think. It's not tearing. You'll see how things behave. I'll give you a live demo of when you limit the frame rates too much lower than what your system is capable of just to get smoother performance. You have trade-offs there. If you need help with what setting impacts the frames, how much and how it looks and things like that, I've done a detailed video on that already, and I'll link that in the description like I mentioned. So that finishes this step. Now next we will get into the Nvidia app. Okay, so now getting into the Nvidia app, I think most of you might have the Nvidia app now, and if not, you can always use either Nvidia Control Panel or Nvidia Profile Inspector to pretty much dial in the same settings that I'll be showing here in the Nvidia app. So you switch to graphics, check out your simulator here, just go directly to driver settings, and we'll start right from the top. So for this one, I say use these GPUs and force it to use 1590 just to make sure it's using 1590. DLSS override model presets, both of these to latest, nothing new there. Make sure that you're selecting latest on both of these. And I leave the DLSS override frame gen and DLSS super resolution to use the application settings. So this is something I set internally within Msfs. Especially frame gen, I don't even use the Nvidia frame gen. I use AMD FSR 3.0 frame gen, because that just is very much stutter free for me, and it behaves a lot better than the native Nvidia frame gen that we have in Msfs. For some reason, it behaves better for me. You should try both of them out and see what works better for you. Same thing, super resolution. I am not selecting anything here because I have selected either quality or balanced. I run balanced because it gives me quite a bit smoother performance, and since I'm running 4K resolution, it doesn't really blur anything out for me. Smooth motion is off, low latency mode is off, max frame rates, we are not selecting anything here. Monitor technology, this is an important one. So even though your monitor is G-Sync compatible, I've been running G-Sync on this monitor and I've been playing with my system. Even though it's a beefy system, with G-Sync compatibility, I just don't know. I see a lot of screen tearing, and I see a lot of, jitteriness going on with G-Sync compatible setting, which I just showed you before this clip. So what I've chosen to do here is select fixed refresh rate. This will select and fix the refresh rate to your monitor's max refresh rate that we selected in the first step. Okay, so remember 120 Hertz is what I had selected, and this is what this thing is going to lock it down to. The next one is Vulkan OpenGL present method. I just leave it to auto. Power management mode, make sure you go for prefer maximum performance. Texture filtering, negative load bias, I leave it at allow, because if you look at the description, it says that allow is for higher performance. And I don't really see any better textures, honestly, if I set it to clamp. And the most important setting here is vertical sync or V-sync, which is another technology. Don't confuse it with G-sync. This is a different thing completely. So V-sync, we are going to turn this to on. So now this is very important. So what this is going to do is, no matter how fast your system is rendering the frames, it is going to make the frames wait and match the number of frames that you are seeing on your monitor to your monitor's refresh rate. What it is doing is, even though the GPU and CPU has rendered the frames, it is going to make the GPU wait before it shows those frames to make sure that the number of frames that are being shown match exactly with the refresh rate that you've chosen for your monitor. The combination of monitor technology set to fixed refresh and vertical sync to on, I feel like this is the holy grail of smoothness in Msfs 2024. Now, without any further ado, let's move on to the next section, and I'll show you the disadvantage of setting this up incorrectly. Okay, so for this section of the video, I had to bring up my control camera. So hi everyone. So what I've done, just to show or just to exaggerate the impact of setting this up wrong, is, now remember that my system is able to get me 130 FPS at ultra settings, right? But what I've done here, just to show you guys the impact, is I've logged my refresh rate to 60 Hertz. So this is an answer to some of the videos that tell you to lock your refresh rate to 50 Hertz no matter what, 60 Hertz no matter what system you have, and just use V-sync and get the smoothest performance ever. This is the problem that you're going to see, and trust me, you're going to mess up your landings. Now you'll observe that yes, I'm getting locked 60 FPS, and if I scroll around, everything seems real nice and smooth, like there's no stutter at all, right? But you see this number right here, that's your latency. Okay, before, when I was running 120 FPS, my latency was like less than 10 millisecond, right? But here my latency is like 20 millisecond, and I'll show you exactly what happens when you have very high latency. If I pull up, you'll see that the stick pulls up a little bit later. If I push it down, you'll see that the stick gets pushed down a little bit later. Pull up, push down, pull up, push down. You see there's a fraction of a second of difference between when I'm pulling up or pushing it down versus when you actually see it happen on the screen. And this is the issue that you're going to see if you guys lock your refresh rate of the monitor way below what your actual system is able to perform. So coming back to my first point, right, you can look at it the other way. Make sure you set your refresh rate very, very close to the frame rates that you're getting from your system. Do not set it way lower than that or way higher than that, because if you set it way higher than that, then you're going to see stutters. If you set it way lower than that, then you're going to see a lot of input lag and latency, right? Because there are a bunch of frames that are just waiting to render, right? It's right there waiting to render, but it cannot render because you're using V-sync, which is now fixing your frame rates to the refresh rate that you've set your monitor to, which is way lower than what your system's performance is. Same way on the other side. If your system's performance is way lower than the refresh rate that you've set it to, then you're going to see stutters. So very, very important again. Set the refresh rate around where you're seeing your optimized Microsoft Flight Simulator settings land in terms of performance. Okay, enough of that. Now I'm going to show you my final results with all of this applied. So here are the final results with 120 Hertz refresh rate on my monitor. By the way, my max refresh rate, remember, is 240, but I'm still limiting to 120 because the max settings in my sim can only give me 120 FPS or a little bit higher than that. So the settings inside Msfs that can give me roughly 120 FPS, my monitor refresh rate to 120 Hertz, V-sync enabled, and monitor technology set to fixed refresh rate. that gives me the best smoothness. Like you see, I'm moving around the cockpit here, no stutters at all, absolutely smooth. And if you look at my latency, or can resemble input lag, it's 8 seconds. So if I turn my camera on again here and put it back on the stick, you'll see that now there's barely any latency. In fact, there's almost zero latency. I can see that the stick is moving 1-to-1 with how I'm moving on my camera. Alright guys, I hope you found value in this video, and if you already knew about this, I'm sorry that it was repetitive, but I hope you at least enjoyed the content overall. And please make sure you leave a comment down below with your experiences, your tweaks, what you guys have been trying on Msfs 2024. Please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channels, do not miss out on any of the future content. Thank you so much for watching all my videos, spending your time on my channel and keeping this channel alive. So thank you so much, and I will see you guys on the next one.